Okay, thank you so much. This is Johnny Lee with the ePanic Button and Peace at Work, and we're going to be covering the topic of prevention teams. And thank you so much for all of you who've been able to join this. You should be getting an email afterwards showing you how you could find this recording as well. And also you'll get the follow-up email from us, so you have any additional questions, just hit me up. A little bit about myself. I head off an organization called Peace at Work, where we do our consulting and our training work. Previously, I was the workplace violence specialist for the state of North Carolina. I was also with the UNC Injury Prevention, that's University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Injury Prevention Research Center, where we looked at a public health approach to violence prevention. And a lot of my street credit, if I could call it that, was involved with the Asheville Police Department, where I was the victim services coordinator responding to the crime scenes. This is being brought to you by the ePanic Button. I'll do a little demo at the end. Believe me, this in no means is this going to be a sort of commercial or showing you, trying to sell you anything. It's truly is meant to be an educational program. It'll take about 3/4 of an hour. I'm fine with people, let's say, interrupting with questions. In fact, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pop out my questions tab, and I'll have that to the side so I'll be able to keep an eye on it. From your user interface, if you see this little arrows, I'm not sure, yours might look orange, or the user interface might look a little bit different, but you expand that out and you should see this tab called questions, and you could expand it out. If you ask any questions there, I will see it and will respond to them. And I won't state who you are if you want to maintain your anonymity. So feel free. I'd much rather have a discussion and a dialogue than just read through my slides. So what are we going to talk about today? Basically, we'll discuss this concept of prevention teams, and that's something that I've thought about as I've worked with a lot of organizations developing their protocols and dealing with, basically I'm addressing the hostile and abusive client sort of issues. It can apply to domestic situations, and it could apply to coworker ones, but I'm really focusing in on the idea that those that serve a large population base, people coming in, visitors who are upset, how we deal with this. And of course, we're going to be talking about, the importance of having one, who should be on that team, and then how you could do an assessment. So as you create these things, you'll devise them to fit your needs specifically. And then we'll talk about the protocols, trainings, and something that I believe is actually the most important aspect is the debriefing on the issue of no matter what I try to present to you here, the real issue is your location, your issues, and your team. And that's what matters, which is unique. I see people also raising their hands, and I'm not sure what you might mean by that. So if you have a question, please shoot me a question, and then I'll be able to answer them. Also, if you want to speak, I'm fine unmuting your mic, and if you want to say something to the crowd as well. Okay. So if that looks good, we'll move on. So what is this? What's this idea of a prevention team? Basically, what I have the thought of, let's just take a situation, let's say a social services agency that maybe a county government department that serves, the EBT cards, the food stamps, disability checks, emergency care. You all might be familiar with social services agencies, what they do. The idea is that within that we could have a core group of people that could be there to nip things in the bud, to address situations. They could support your coworkers who are threatened personnel. It might be receptionists or caseworkers. And the idea is to nip it in the bud. My primary issue is about stopping things before they escalate. I just attended a training on ALICE yesterday. That's the sort of active shooter response being taught to law enforcement. That's a separate topic. I'll be doing a webinar on active shooter drills later. But this is very extreme. When someone comes in with a gun and starts firing off rounds, that's, oh my goodness, it's horrific and very, very rare. But the point is that it's much more common to have an upset, angry person, and I want to prepare people for dealing with those situations. And also those upset, angry people are those that might eventually go on to become that active shooter rampage situation. So what we're really talking about is preventing the escalation, preventing the aggression. I don't think I'll go on my tangent about the rarity of truly random assaults. The vast majority of these have a grievance, and we need to identify that grievance and address them early on. So while you might have security, or of course there's always calling 911 to get law enforcement involved, the real trick is about who is immediately around that can respond within seconds, not minutes or so, to address the problem and offer support. This is really a bit different. When we talk about organizations, and let's say we discuss a large institution like a social services department, there may be threat assessment teams. Maybe you've joined me for some of my webinars on that. That's really more of an administrative and management level function that's going to look at an incident and then determine, or look at a threat or look at a report and then determine lethality and likelihood. That's a separate thing. And then there's emergency management teams. When we do have a crisis occurring, there should be a management team that could help mitigate that crisis. This is really, again, prevention, and that's where I really feel that the whole workplace violence industry has really been a bit distracted with this active shooter stuff. Let's address this stuff early on. I hope you agree with me. Now, why do we have one? Naturally, number one is we want to provide support for harassed coworkers. I want to emphasize that I know everyone's scared of someone coming with a gun and shooting someone, but again, that's extremely rare. What is not uncommon is for someone to come in and curse someone out or yell at someone or make a scene. And even though, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me unless you hit me with a dictionary. The point is that harassment does have an impact. It ruins your day, makes you think about changing your job, and impacts your morale and impacts your ability to do the job. So there's importance, there's value in addressing those low forms of threats. Naturally, those threats, those low forms of harassment, as I mentioned, can escalate. I've cut out a lot of slides because I found that I didn't have enough time, but there's proof, there's evidence showing that the vast majority of these incidents are not people with guns. It's people doing simple assaults, battery, yelling and screaming. The other thing, and this is really my secret agenda, my own personal hidden agenda. It's about developing a sense of safety community within your organization. I don't believe that we should think that it's this is even, well, I won't go there. It's not necessarily law enforcement's responsibility to prevent these incidents. It's not maybe even security's. They certainly have a role if you have on-site security. What we must see is that it's everybody's responsibility, and everyone can have a role in terms of prevention. No, you don't have to run in there and take out someone with a Glock, but can you step in and support a coworker that's being threatened and harassed? Is there a role that you could play, not even intervening directly, but we'll talk about that shortly. So what we're talking about is support at the local level, and by local, I mean really local. Within your floor. Try to imagine within a baseball throw. If you can throw a Frisbee around your office, regardless of walls, like who in your immediate area is there as your support network. Now, of course, there's natural concerns for people who are truly isolated, like left alone. Like I'm trying to imagine, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a workplace where someone's entirely alone. Even if you look at like a mall where you have a single person working at a kiosk, there's a community there. That's where we could see other folks stepping in to offer that support. Maybe the mall is a bad example because there's security usually readily available. And then again, I'm talking about that larger impact on culture and awareness in the sense that there's an ownership for everyone to recognize they have a role within safety and security. So what is this all about? Why we're doing this is maybe you don't have quote-unquote security on site, and then this is your security. If it does get serious, then you certainly would be calling 911 to get law enforcement, but this could be something for those organizations that don't have officers or armed uniformed security. Or it could also act as a way to supplement them, because if you try to think of 3 stages, we've got coworkers handling low-level stuff, security handling mid-range stuff, and then we have law enforcement for the extreme high-end threats. Again, we're applying appropriate levels of response to the level of threat. It may be also that maybe your organization has an incident. We have issues with a certain visitor, or during a certain time frame, like you've canceled a program and everyone's really upset. Maybe then we need to create a response around this issue, around these incidents. One thing, as you may agree with me, I hope, I put the word objective here twice, what is it that you want the team for? Identify it specifically, and if you can quantify that as well. To be successful in anything, you really have to clearly identify what you're shooting for, and then you can know whether you've hit that target or not. Big question. Who? Again, this is very broad, because I don't know, I recognize some names on the call, but we've got government, we've got healthcare, we've got a lot of different organizations, and they all have different scenarios. The idea is we've got a group of people, let's say 5 to 6 folks, who will be those responders who kind of respond and deal with situations as they arise. My experience is that don't create a committee and have 5, 6 meetings about selection. Maybe this is my personal habit and maybe not be the best way to do things, but have you all heard of ready, aim, fire? Please excuse the violent analogy metaphor there, but ready, aim, fire is what most people do in terms of executing a program. I'm a fan of ready, fire, steer. Go ahead, get it together as best you can, put it out there, and adapt from there. Believe me, I've spent a lot of time putting a lot of effort in something, which is the way I think it should be done. I put it out there and I find out what is better. I feel that's just a better way. So choose your team quickly, make adjustments through the debrief to make the change. If you have a small office, naturally everyone can be on that team. Try to think of an office of 8 to 12 people. It can make sense there. Larger agencies, let's say a social services agency, maybe you're going to select your members based on their on criteria. I'm going to talk about that most in a little bit. The one thing I'm not a fan of, I did do this once at a campus, a large campus, and there was one guy who was like, well, there's a sort of attitude where we have this ex-law enforcement, ex-military who's, I'll handle it, I've got it, I'm the person who will manage it, and I just never believe in putting all responsibility on a single individual. There's there's problems with redundancy, but there's also issues where all your eggs in one basket. So I'm a big fan of the team approach, not only because, let's say, the person's sick and not able to be there, but there's different situations that require different skill sets. Maybe you need a big guy who's physically intimidating, to provide that sort of coverage, but then you've got someone who's a better talker. Maybe you got someone who's really good at, convincing others to calm down, or to settle down, and it's just through their nature. Different scenarios may require different skill sets. The one thing I am stating is, and this isn't in contradiction what I just said, but a coordinator is important. As you know, with a lot of initiatives, you ever hear camel by committee? I do believe in having a focal point, a person who can oversee the program, and then again, this might be your security department that's going to collect those reports and analyze them and do reports and manage the program. But if you don't have in-house security, have somebody who's managing this. Maybe the safety person, maybe under HR. But the idea is that they're the center point for coordinating the meetings and things like this. They're the ones who may not even be the ones running down the hallway to deal with it, but they will be coordinating those responses and doing the debriefs. Now, the one thing, I didn't use the term here, but often I use the term champion. No one ever likes to be assigned or volunteered a job. Like anything else, I believe that for it to be successful, there has to be an innate enthusiasm for this. So the person who squeaks the wheel the most, one who really cares about this issue, makes sense to be the coordinator, even despite their skill set, even if they may have lacking other experience or administrative capabilities. I've always value enthusiasm and someone who cares about the issue. So they're the ones who will continue to make sure that it's carried out. Although on the other side, it would be idea if the person also has some skills as well. Now this could be the security person. Again, I don't know what your organization is. Maybe even have a CSO, like a chief security officer. But these coordinators, I really am a fan of that local who knows them, not some guy or woman who's, in the next town who's you connect by email and you've met once or twice in a meeting. I'm a big fan of a local person. And if you've got an organization that has multiple offices, then I do suggest having multiple people, sort of like, golly, I hate to put it this way, but like a hall monitor or the fire drill captain, someone who's for that location is in charge. And then we can certainly have some coordination and communication among those coordinators. Now, so we've got a single person as a coordinator. We can have multiple responders. This, again, for a small office, it may make sense that everyone's involved with this. Although larger places, again, let's go back to the interest and dedication. Their ability to handle, this is going to bug me. I got to fix this. Handle. Okay. I even read this through just before we did this program. Their skill sets. I mentioned earlier this idea of the big guy who used to play defensive line for college. You think, oh, hey, he'd be a great guy to be on this prevention team to dealing with hostile visitors. Maybe so. I recognize that logic, but we want to find people, more importantly, who handle tension well, who deal with conflict well. Later on, I'm going to briefly cover the de-escalating skill set sort of things, and those who are focused, who are not intimidated, at the same time are not quick-tempered as well. You can't rile them. Someone who's able to keep a level head, even if someone's talking about their mother, that's the sort of the thing we're looking for. So, are you going to run an aptitude test or bring in a psychologist to define these people? No. I think who in your organization might fit this bill. So bring them in. The second thing, there's other factors. Naturally, these are obvious, but it has to come into play. We want to find the person who's most likely to be there. Maybe you've got an office, somebody who's out in the field often, or who's often so busy, dealing with something that they cannot respond. So even though you're looking at the skill set that's important, the other thing is who's going to be readily available, of course. Now, one of the things is, even though you found this group of people that handle things, naturally, I want to emphasize that everyone's responsibility. It might be that they find others to handle, who help assist with the crisis, or they know how to escalate things. Not, make things worse, but I mean escalate the response, get a higher level of response, such as, calling 911. Now, whoever you have doing this, naturally, I create policies and protocols all the time, and we can look at as a human resources approach. People are really good at creating learning objectives and PowerPoints and stuff like that. I strongly believe in experience and experiential trainings, and this is a little tricky because I've tried to do this, and it can be disruptive when you try to have it at the location. My point is, to actually role play and practice these things is really important. And with that, I really am in favor of actually role playing in the location. Last time I did this was at a mental health facility, and there was a lobby, and it was tricky because we have visitors come in. You don't want to do a training when you have actual clients there, but it was an outpatient mental health facility, community-based program. The issue is that if you can get people there after hours to still focus in the actual locations. I do a lot of trainings, a lot, and I'm always given an auditorium and a training room, and that's great. I appreciate it. That's great. But that's not where people are going to be dealing with the crisis. Let's have them practice in their location. The front lobby is a very common place for these things to break down. And then go through your this is part of the assessment. Go through your case log, go through your security records, and what were the incidents that occur? Do you have a lot of angry parents? Is that the situation? That happens a lot in K through 12 situations. Public schools, not higher education, but high schools. What are the things that you encounter, and then practice those. By the way, I want to say a little thing. As an educator, people hate role plays, right? You're always like, oh, roll the eyes. They hate it. There's value in finding an outside person because to be that aggressor. So bringing in an actor, bringing in a professional person, bringing someone from a different office so they don't recognize that person. And it's kind of hard to like role play and do this acting with someone that you know well. But if it's a stranger, then maybe it's a bit more believable that they are a hostile person. I emphasized that point already regarding practicing in the actual areas, but there are some, if it has to be done on the clock, how should I put this, while there's folks there, naturally try to find that low period. Is there a time when there's few visitors? And of course make it very obvious that it's a training is going on. The whole active shooter thing, right? If you join me for the other program I'm going to be doing shortly, the most horrific thing anyone can ever do is to do an active shooter drill where everyone and all the witnesses do not know it's a drill. That's a recipe for disaster right there. And then with those experiential trainings, make it fit for your team. Make it fit for your scenario and your location. I'll try to give you the basics, generic ones, but it truly has to be fine-tuned to your environment. Now, as we develop this, let's think about, again, who needs it. So I could tell you right now, front lobbies, the meeting rooms, if you have like a conference room where you meet with your clientele. Let's think again, the social services agency, we have a social worker who maybe meets folks in their office, but maybe you have meeting rooms. I think you see where I'm going with this. Within retail, again, earlier if you joined us late, I was going through a bunch of cases, the recent cases, and there's quite a number that happened in Walmart. And in retail establishments, there's often a customer service desk, like return area, and a lot of things occur there, so naturally that's a good spot. I think I'm listing at different spots you can look at. The one thing I want to point out that right now I'm doing a study on domestic violence assaults in the workplace, and one of the most common areas, believe it or not, is the parking lot. So I know that sounds crazy, but consider also what it's like to be out there in the sunshine, in the rain, at dark, in the parking lot, dealing with this. Whenever you do training, if anyone's ever done intensive training, especially been through the military, you try to fit your scenario, your environment, your encounters to be as close to reality as possible. Because people, when you do trainings, it's going to be more valuable when it's more realistic. The one thing I want to emphasize, and this is, I do other webinars where I expand on this issue, but please understand, while we're talking about protocol and people and training and skill sets, this is your environment. This is your office. This is your front lobby. You could recognize things like, golly, the arrangement of the chairs would be better if we could do it this way. Or maybe this little meeting room off to the side, maybe we could reserve this for our angry customers. Do you see what I'm saying? Whenever you talk about security, location, or any kind of like, even generals talking about warfare, location is primary, and those who can control the location have a lot of advantage. You could prevent a lot of things from just creating the environment. In fact, there's an entire field called crime prevention through environmental design. That's CPTED is the acronym. And so there's an entire science behind reducing crime through changing the environment appropriately. Okay, so what can we do? Naturally, get rid of the weapons that could potentially be available. And please understand that many things can be used as a weapon. Funny, I was just talking to, I just came with this training the other day, and we're talking about a weapon that's readily available in most public areas is a fire extinguisher. Now, you've seen the fire extinguishers they're mounting on the walls. You're not supposed to ever leave them on the ground, right? That's an OSHA thing. But you'll see them just like on a hook on the wall. Well, even if it's in a case, could that somehow reduce the chance for them getting to it? Things like letter openers, big heavy staplers, things like that. Again, mental health facilities that deal with the community or have high incident rates. So, think about to have those chairs that cannot be moved around. You ever see those chairs that interlocked? I don't know about bolting them to the floor. I've been in those facilities where all the furniture is bolted to the ground. There's reasons for that. You could choose to go that way, but then you also have those setups where like the chairs are sort of interlocked, because believe me, I've seen chairs fly across the room many times, and after that, that's when people say, well, we need to change how things are done. The second factor is not just the available weapons, but you see the means to escape. When you have those hostile areas, areas that have a higher probability for an encounters, give your employees a back door, a way that they could get out. When you think about the active shooter scenario, the first step is evade, is run, right? That's the first thing you want to do is escape, if possible. Now, if you can't escape, there's also value in the sense of a safe room. There could be a place where, again, maybe you have your hostile encounters, or a place to retreat to, where you could barricade it. You got phones in there. You got a back door. It's an easy place to find security. Now, a part of this is we've got a receptionist who's alone, and the question is, how do they summon the prevention team? What do they do to get that help? Okay, I know it looks like I'm doing a plug here. I guess I am. We got this great program with the ePanic button, but even if you don't use our product, you could use another one, right? Something everyone can do is have code words. There's real value in doing this. I've heard the code words. I worked with a colleague. Actually, he came up, I believe he's the one who came up with this, about green file for low-level concerns, red file for high-level concerns. Come to think of it, I think that sounds funny. Oh, we need the red file. I think that's too obvious. What I've seen done really well is they come up with the name of somebody. Like in healthcare situations, it's Dr. So-and-so for this and Dr. So-and-so and that for another level of issues. The point is you could pretend that you're making a phone call. You could pretend that you're trying to get support for their needs, and you can drop that code word. Also, in hostage situations, this comes into play really well. I know I'm going off on a separate tangent, but often domestic violence victims are kidnapped or held hostage, and they could say, hey, let me call in to work just to let them know that I'm sick or whatever, so they don't come looking for me. That's not uncommon. I often, within safety plannings, come up with code words to tip people off that they're in danger. Even though I talked about the ePanic button, it may be, depending upon your email program, talk to your IT folks, you can come up with email hotkeys. For all of us, or for if you've got a Windows phone or a Droid or an iPhone, there are apps. If they're not free, they're ridiculously cheap, like $3, $5 to get a hot button, a panic button on your phone. That's a great idea, even if you're, regardless of work, just in your own personal life. And then there's always good old yelling, right? Personally, I know this sounds like a plug for ePanic, but I believe to have a range of skills, not just, you don't want to confuse people by giving them 12 code words to remember, but can you do 2? Can you handle 3? Because when the responders, the receivers of that code or signal know a little bit more about the situation, that's going to help them immensely address the issue. Funny, I was just talking to an officer last night, and he railed on me because I told him I'd do a duress button. He goes, he's sick of getting these robbery calls that people hit the panic button and it comes to him as a robbery. And robberies have a different level of response. In fact, everyone ever thinks that domestic violence are the most dangerous calls. I think I heard, while I was at another conference, someone was talking about law enforcement safety, and actually one of the most dangerous things for law enforcement to do in terms of violence is responding to an active robbery. That was one of the most deadly in terms of violence. Actually, one of the most dangerous things for officers is car accidents when they're pulling someone over and they end up getting hit. And then confirm receipt if there's ways that the sender can know that someone acknowledged the issues, and of course, discreet. The one thing I want to push here is the redundancy. I'm a big fan of having several systems in place. So, you got to have a fail-safe system. The picture I got right here, I just want to put out to you is you can go to Target, or I'm not endorsing any organizations, but you go to a hardware store or a department store and they've got these remote controlled doorbells. So this big unit gets plugged into an outlet. This little thing is portable. You could, Velcro it on a desk or put it in your pocket, and there's a little AA or AAA battery that goes in there. And it just, you press the button and the little doorbell goes off. Boom, it's a panic button. What was it? I think I spent $15, but that was a few years ago. It's probably $20 now. Instant panic button. Not reliable. I wouldn't suggest it, but if they're not going to invest in a more sophisticated system, it's better than nothing. All right, moving on. Boom. What's the protocol in situations? Again, I don't know if you commonly have a certain scenario which you prepare for, but again, have a range of options. Be aware that when you create a team that deals with a crisis or a critical incident, the flexibility is the key term. I've heard this phrase: the first thing to go in a battle is the plan. So the first casualty of a battle is the plan. So be prepared to respond dynamically. With that, even though I can say you can't prepare for everything, there's guiding principles, and the first one is always safety. I guess as a security professional, I'm going to push this mantra of go ahead and err on the side of caution. Go ahead and assume that it may be worse than it actually is. If you're wrong, maybe you'll be laughed at. Maybe people would frown on you saying, hey, what's going on? But the other side of that is, what if you go the opposite direction where you go, well, I think it'll be okay. Maybe we don't need to call the police. Maybe we don't need to respond to that, and something does occur. So be aware of the level of concerns around that. So what does the team do? Broadly, responders, this prevention team, are going to do three broad things. We have the signal being received. So you hear someone yelling, or you get a code word. Whatever it is, as you respond, you're assessing the situation. You're going to help address it. You're going to defuse it, help mitigate the conflict, or you're going to escalate, not escalate the tension, but escalate the response, meaning you're going to bring in more resources to handle the level of issues. And I'm going to go over these things in depth. The one thing I want to mention, though, is even though I said this is roughly in order, it's continual. It's really a cyclical thing. You're always assessing. Okay, put it that way. You make a decision, you act on it. Whatever action you take is going to impact the situation, which will require another assessment. Does that make sense? Always be aware that the situation is dynamic, and you've got to take it for where it is and where it may be going. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that assessment. As you're on your way there, you got the signal. Is there some sort of communication among your responders? Is that a phone? Most people have a phone on them. Maybe you could quickly have a group chat, a group almost like a distribution list for your text, so you can quickly say things, hey, I'm on it, I'm heading here, and people can respond that way. Ideally, I'd love it for the sender to know that you're coming, because there's value. It's you're reassuring them, but also there's the point that they would be handling the situation differently, knowing that they're going to be getting additional reinforcements. Also, is there a way that they can get further information to you? So again, this may involve they call you pretending that you're Dr. So-and-so, and they're relaying to you the situation. That's just an example. And then, of course, communication among the team members. And maybe try to imagine that there's a front lobby area and people are in the back in the employees area. They know there's a situation out front. What I'm trying to prevent is everyone rushing in. Try to imagine you've got a dozen or 8 responders, prevention team members, all 8 running in there to save the day could actually complicate and make things worse. So that communication coordination is important. Finally, if those responders also could have a way of informing management or administration of the situation so that there's an FYI. Your general manager, your executive director, your attorney is not going to be the one running down the hallway to deal with it, but having them in the loop and having them on standby for whatever issues that may come out of this could help nip things in the bud. Okay. As you're running down the hallway, I'm talking to you. Now I'm getting very, very specific here. If you're going to be on this team, right, be aware of the adrenaline rush. I think anyone's, if there's any officers on here, anybody who's been in the military, you can appreciate that the impact of responding to a situation, the physical, visceral impact on your bodies. That's why I'm literally talking about vitals, referring to your heartbeat and your breathing. This physiological response will impact the way you handle things. Again, this relates to, you find people who are level-headed, people who get excited naturally, who are sort of like, what's what I'm looking for? Those who overreact to things, it's because their bodies are pumping through adrenaline through their system, and then they may inadvertently make the situation due to that. So being centered, being calm, who people are like, if you're like that or not. Be aware of the body response and going in there. Here's a little tip. Here's just a trick that I've learned. When I'm anxious and go like, oh, I can't handle this. I don't know what I'm doing here. I just pretend I'm someone else, meaning I pretend that I'm someone I respect. Okay, I used to do Outward Bound for many, many years, and doing outdoor wilderness adventure programs. We ran some situations, bears, people untying their harnesses when they're 50 feet in the air, some pretty crazy situations. And when I was a little confused and anxious and lost about what to do, there was a course director, a veteran woman named Jane Ann, and I was like, oh, what would Jane Ann do? Okay, she would probably do this. All right, that's what I would do. That really helped me deal with crisis situations, and that's just a little tip for you. Okay, again, go back to your personality, who you are. Typically in a crisis situation, when you're encountering hostility, you might be the type to fight back, you might be the type to run. Worst of all, you might be the type to freeze. It may be appropriate to fight, it might be appropriate to run, but it should always be a choice, a definitive choice and controlled, not out of panic or out of a knee-jerk reaction. So as you approach, again, being aware of your own things. I know we're talking about de-escalating someone else. The first step in de-escalating someone else is making sure that you're calm, cool, and collective. Okay, so as you're arriving, listen. Naturally, you don't want to burst into the room, sort of like you hear about, like, you remember the fire drills? You're supposed to touch the door or touch the handle of the door before you enter the room if you think there's a fire, because you could, the backdraft, you can bring in, you can make the fire worse. Well, you can make the situation worse by bursting into a room where there's a fight going on. Listen in. How many folks are you dealing with? Are you alone? So you ever see those folks who try to rescue someone out on the ice who fell through the ice, and you run out there to help them out, and boom, you fall on the ice. Now you got 2 people. This happens all the time with people who are lost. So I'll go find her, and now you got 2 people lost in the woods. Again, before you commit yourself, make sure you've got that life raft as well. And additionally, emphasize that point, are you adding to the problem? At that stage, naturally, are there weapons present? Is there actually a scuffle, or fist, chairs, and baseball bats flying all over the place? At that point, no, you want to escalate this response, meaning probably 911 or in-house security to be contacted. It's part of the alert and informed parts of the ALICE response. Now, first responder, I know that's a very specific term, that term first responder. In my lingo, and within this protocol, it means literally the first person there, like whoever gets there first. Again, you're doing that assessment, determining if you should stay out and just get higher level of response. But if you choose to be involved, then it may be that your role is to support that initial sender, the person who's in trouble. That might be taking over. It might be, here's a great example. That receptionist might be a veteran meaning a really good person who's handled everything, but they're answering the phones, they've got a queue of people. Your job might be coming in and just handling their other duties. Let that person continue, give their full attention to the problem person, and then you're alleviating that receptionist of all their other duties, answering the phone, dealing with other visitors. Maybe you're getting rid of the audience. I can't remember if I took out this slide, but a very important aspect of hostile situations, hostile encounters, especially when someone's going off, is audience has a very important role in that situation. And then, of course, maybe you're really skilled at defusing, de-escalating. Well, do it then. Naturally. Now, again, I'm a fan of the team approach, so maybe there's going to be a second or third responders. It might be their role to be on standby. So you're offering that support, but be very cautious of ganging up. When someone is upset, and depending upon their personality and a unique situation, they may feel physically threatened when they're surrounded by folks. Now, there's advantage. The thing is like the Colin Powell doctrine of overwhelming force. You just intimidate the heck out of them so that they have no intention of committing any violence. But depending upon the situation, it may be that you are escalating it where they feel threatened by somebody. So be aware of that ganging up issues. It might be that you're outside the room or within view or listening so that you are prepared with the phone in your hand to call 911 or call security or to rush in there. So that's what I mean, monitoring for escalation. It may be very well that depending upon the nature of the incident, you may switch out. Who is best able to handle this? And again, it depends upon the variety of encounters you may see. I'm just going to throw this out here because I think it's a reality. Sometimes it's a gender issue. Sometimes it's a race issue that, it could be that someone who's, for a fact that this guy works better with women. Have the woman come in again. I'll go back to a quick war story with Outward Bound, where I used to do adjudicated youth programs, and I dealt with young men. And these typical young men typically did not have a father figure in their lives, and so me as an older man coming in, they didn't see they didn't recognize me as a father figure, as an authority. They saw me as this rival, as just another guy. But they were typically raised by their mothers or their grandmothers, and we had. Another case, again, Jane Ann, the lady I mentioned, an older woman, she could handle situations so much better. I swear, well, some of it's her skill set, but some is because she was an older woman. These guys were raised by older women, and they had a certain level of respect for that type of person. So, and that's just giving you an example of what I mean by finding the best person to handle the situation. Second things that they could do is be relaying information to administrators. Initially, I said that you want to give them the FYI, hey, we got a situation in the front desk. Maybe you give them yep, we got it. It's just we're handling it. It's a little situation. Or, hey, oh my goodness, I think this is going to get intense. That guy who's we've been talking about, whatever the situation may be, if it's an issue where you require that administrative authority to handle things, maybe you need to have them on there because it could escalate into something that's going to require their attention. As I mentioned before, audience is a huge problem. So one thing I typically try to suggest is removing the person to an not isolated, but to an area where you could talk to them separately, or removing the audience, removing people from this area. One thing that happens sometimes is the perpetrator, the angry dad, comes in with their wife, cousin, sister, brother, and 5 children. Doing something with those folks, you can talk to the father alone, might be a good thing to do. And then, as I mentioned, as you see down there, additional support issues. Now I'm going to get briefly, I'm going to talk about, how are we with time? Oh my goodness. Real quick with defusing, de-escalation, I do other trainings on this, so this is really a specific thing, but here's it in a nutshell. You want to provide active listening, reflective listening. Most people can be de-escalated if you just let them vent it out. And then, providing that support. They're mad about something, right? Meet that need. There's a grievance. Address that grievance. It might be allowing if there's someone who's being targeted there, allowing them to leave, give them the opportunity to go. I talked about removing the audience. Maybe it's a matter of letting the subject leave. And I'm a big fan of that. If they did something like damage property or something like that, you think you got to tackle them and wait for law enforcement to arrive? No. Unless you're security, you should never put your hands on someone unless it's directly in self-defense or defending another person. And I mentioned other things, handling other factors. Here's one thing that's really annoying. Sometimes people feel like that. I see. There's some response. I'll respond to your question shortly. Some people feel that they're being taken seriously. Golly, I do this, come to think of it, when I'm talking to a manager. So I just had this, I'm going to vent right now. Here's everyone can do some role play now. I've got this home warranty. I got some issues with the new house I just bought, and I'm dealing with the home warranty people, and the nice lady on the phone, she's not answering my questions. I want to talk to a supervisor, and even though that person's going to say the same thing, I feel like I need to up the issue because my needs are not being met. Sometimes people literally calm down when they feel like they're talking to an authority who can actually solve their problems. Let me address some questions I just got. Great point. Someone's making an issue about with the multiple responders. Thank you. In fact, I'm going to create a slide for this because this is an excellent point. Don't have 5 people, 3 people, even 2 people dealing with the individual. Have one person. Ideally, it's the best person, whoever that might be, meaning the first person or the one that has the best skill set. But I've seen it go really poorly when you have 3 people trying to solve someone's problem. The other folks could be there to support. They can run off and get some paperwork, whatever, but have one person deal with them. That's an excellent point. And here's another comment. When multiple people try to communicate or speak to the suspect at one time, it could escalate the situation. Thank you. Great point. I'm going to remember to make a slide about that. So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to quickly blaze through de-escalation. As I mentioned, listening is very important. All the things you do about offering support and all that, you can do all the right things, be really nice to them, but at some point you really need to address inappropriate behavior, because even when they're upset and they're acting irrationally, I believe everyone's actually still in response and is in control of their behavior at some level, and they are aware that if they're cursing or yelling, that they know what they're doing is inappropriate. You should call it out to them. Set clear boundaries, not in an authoritarian sort of way, not in a threatening way, but let them know that's inappropriate, and I'm not going to we cannot allow that to continue. I'm about to do a women's self-defense program, and that's my big issue. Is I think that with many dating abuse situations or even sexual harassment, assault, it's very clearly let someone know when they've started crossing a line, so that they know you're not the type of person to take that sort of stuff. Now, whenever you're trying to modify anyone's behavior, we're talking about a dog, your kids, your boss, your spouse. A very simple common tactic is the idea of carrot and a stick. And what this means is show them, there's an array of consequences or alternatives, right? If you continue with this negative behavior, there's going to be a negative consequence. You're going to be kicked out. You're going to be asked to leave. We're going to call the police. Something which you don't want to happen will happen. However, if you continue, oops, sorry about that. I have to call Tom shortly. If you do the behavior we want, stop cursing, talk calmly, work with us through this paperwork, we're going to meet your needs. So, that thing you get more with sugar than with vinegar, guide people saying, hey, if you play nice, you'll get what you want, in a sense. That's what you got to present to them so that they will move forward. One thing I want to emphasize, though, is it's part of the assessment. This is very subtle and might take some practice and some maybe innate ability. But there's a lot of experts out there, a lot of security folks. I've heard this from different security folks that there's sort of two types of aggressors. There's the desperate people who are really bad off and they're normal Joes like you and me. I've probably been in the situation where they're upset, but they're good people. You know, they're just poor coping skills or whatever it might be. Help them meet their need and they're fine. Expert aggressors, that's Al Capone there, I believe, are people who know intentionally use threatening behavior and hostility to manipulate you. Or maybe they're even not being overtly hostile. They could be really sweet and kind, but they're going to be messing with you. These expert aggressors, I don't think that active listening, providing support, giving them candy is going to get anywhere. It's setting boundaries. With expert aggressors, they're looking, they choose their targets, and if you say, hey, I've got clearly defined boundaries, they know they can't mess with you. So it takes a little, and I don't know if it's, you know, everyone fits and can't be, and everyone fits and everyone else fits and can't be or see. It may not be clearly defined, but broadly, you'll find that many aggressors fit in either of these categories. All right, when they leave, how do they do it? Ensure they do. Watch them walk into the car. This is a little security thing. A lot of people have a gun in their car, so make sure that they do leave and be prepared to go into lockdown. There have been many cases, I guess I could throw in a case scenario where people they go home, get their gun, then they come back. So be prepared, whether it's calling 911, locking down, whatever it might be, depending upon the way they left and the nature of their threats that they made. Be aware that them simply leaving is not the end of the situation. Okay, you're not on the response team. You're still part of security. Obviously, you're the ones who are the eyes and ears being prepared for any potential threats that are out there. Also, they can have a role maybe clearing out the lobby, maybe taking on assigned duties, whatever it is. Maybe their job is simply to stay out, and that's a very important role for them. Just keep people out of the front lobby. That's including yourself. That could be an important role. For true crisis situations, this really falls under sort of the active shooter sort of situations, and it's separate webinar, but you know, have that situation in place. Obviously, presence of a weapon, immediate danger, physical violence, that really is a 911 kind of situation. And this is involved sort of mass notification protocols and, you know, the whole run, hide, fight sort of response. Talking about just a few unique situations, one thing I do believe is that I believe in many cases you know what the issue is going to be. Maybe you have a client that's always been a problem. Have a response protocol for them. Boom. Let me just run through a few quick ones. You got angry customers or clients, meet their needs, whatever it is, try to address their concerns. Don't bend the rules, but fix the grievance as best as you can. One factor I want to also throw in here is mental health and substance abuse, meaning someone who's actively under the influence. I don't think it's very easy unless you have specific skill sets. If you're specifically trained in this and you deal with this a lot, like mental health professionals, I don't suggest folks dealing with someone who's not able to be rational, because it's really hard to do those things. It's really about getting the support, setting clear boundaries, and then maybe getting that security or law enforcement response so that it ends the situation. Crime, this falls under the expert aggressors. You know, you're not going to be nice to someone who's scoping you out and planning to rob you. So that's really vital. Again, that's really, I feel, a 911 sort of response. Recognize that this person is, you know, you're not going to talk them down. They're out there to get your money, sexual assault, whatever it might be. You really got to focus on escalating response and setting clear boundaries. Something that's really interesting to me, and it's sort of this flash mob issue. I do a separate workshop on flash mob robberies, crowd scenarios. I'm really fascinated with this whole thing. You know, people are really upset about things, especially government-related issues, and you're going to see sort of protest things. This is where it's really important to have specific protocols and multiple responders deal with these crowd situations. I've seen a couple things. Sometimes they're politically motivated. Sometimes these are just like crowds going nuts. Try to think of Black Friday at Walmart. You know, that sort of stuff is really horrific. It's really sad that these things go on. I won't go on to that. But I'll just say having a very clear response, be prepared for those situations with adequate resources is the key. Yes, there's some training going on, but it really comes down to resources, you know, the people. typical things that I've just been doing this huge study on domestic violence, realizing that these things do spill over into the workplace and they really are unique. Be very cautious of ever intervening between two people. Shoot, I should create a slide for this. If you ever have two people going at it, two clients or two folks like fighting, please understand that one of the most dangerous things you can do is try to step in between them. Unless you're specifically trained and you know what you're doing, it's a great way to get punched. Now, afterwards, I'm a huge fan of documentation. It's vital that you document these events so you can have a track record. One very important thing about documentation is it leads to money. Documentation equals budget allocation. If you've got a stack of incident reports, you have a better chance of getting a duress alarm system, buzzer doors for, to allow people into, maybe more staff, increasing client to staff ratios, stuff like that. All of this, no matter what I ever teach you today, whatever you got out of this, it's not nearly as important as what your team does and actually experience in the event. Whatever you briefly create or try to come up with some trainings, ideally one of the most important things you can do is debrief your incidents so there's a constant improvement. What is that Sigma 6 sort of approach to management? The idea is to constantly improve, recognize vulnerabilities, strengthen assets so that you're able to handle things better. I know this sounds obvious and management folks should know this, but it's true. The best thing you can do is look at the way you've handled it and take it from there. When you do it, I do a lot of debriefings when we do the experiential stuff, and basically you ask what happened. And by the way, there's also value when you do the documentation that people do it separately, not together. Then you come together and you ask people what happened. And then you ask, so what? What was the learnings from that? What's the implications of what occurred? And then, of course, now what? Where are we going from here? What can we do? What can we take from this lesson and play it forward? Obviously, there's this idea about sustainability that meaning the prevention team is going to be something that can augment, that can continue trainings. Again, that's part of the documentation where you can maybe get some additional resources, training, or technology to help you so that it continues. One thing that happens a lot, I was just talking to another colleague about this. There's sort of this hot potato situation where you have a crisis and everyone cares about it. It's the hot button issue. We see this in our national politics. Everyone cares about this until there's something else that comes up. And then now you forgot about it and you moved on. There's got to be that continued attention to the issue so that we can see that there's improvement. Broadly, don't plan for everything. That's just my view. It's better to have a good team than a good plan. That's a colleague, August Vernon, who does emergency management. That's his quote that I stole from him. Oh, there it is, line 2. Okay, great. I should really put his name underneath there. The best training is actually practicing it, and then the vital thing is about awareness, that having your whole organization being prepared to stay focused and aware of the situation. Broadly, here's the kumbaya kind of group hug final slide. It really comes down to that sense of community, and that's what I was discussing before. Whether you've got great protocols and great technology, it's really about the organization that people really care about each other and that are looking out for each other. It's really the vital. I've seen organizations that are well-funded and have great consultants come in and create A+ prevention teams, but people just didn't care about it, and they're thinking about their next job, and then it was sort of sharp elbows, and it was not a happy place. Those places, no matter what you put into it, how much money you spend, those areas are high risk. Those environments have a greater chance for a poor response to a situation than a place where people are actively concerned and care about each other. So, and then also with that, because you care about each other, it's a friendlier place. You have more energy. You're happy to be there, and you pass that on to your clients. Clients can pick up on it. I won't mention the airline, but I fly a lot, and there was one airline that I swear the people just hate working there, and you could just see why they have so many problems, because no one's ever happy. The stewardess to the flight attendant to the counter person. It's not. They have a lot of problems, and you could see that it stems from that sort of environment where no one likes it. Thank you. Golly, I know I went a little over. All apologies. This is brought to you by the ePanic button. We have more webinars come up. Please join us for those. Stick around. I'm going to do a very brief, like a 30-second demo of the ePanic button. If you think it might apply, you're welcome to take it on for a trial. We don't bill you after 30 days. We give it to you. You play with it. You say you like it or not, but we don't like invoice you after 30 days or anything. This is what it is, folks. Software where you could mouse over your little icon in your computer. This window pops up and you click with your mouse on one of these things, or each of these buttons has a corresponding hotkey like Control F5, and we do have a whole bunch of different hardware options. We just released or announced all of our unique hardware options, USB plug and play kind of stuff. So if you do any of those three things, we got pop-up alerts. I'll show that in a second. We got text messages, and we have emails going out to different people with different messages. So security could get a pop-up, a text, and an email. Your bigwig chief of surgery would just get an email. Maybe your coworkers are told, hey, stay out of the front lobby. It's really versatile and really cool. Just to show you real quick what that looks like, I'm going to mouse over at the little red icon by my Dropbox. So I mouse over. Here are my two buttons. With our default settings, we have support for low-level concerns, red button for a high-level concern. I click it. Let me turn on my speaker. There you go. Let me stop it. My phone just went off. I can turn on my webcam, and you can see my text that I just received. This all says who sent it, the message involved, and whatever thing you want to put in there as well. So with any kind of, you're also able to add in here, it was Johnny, whatever you want. So it's further documentation for your incident, and you can export this all out. See, there's my little note that you do, folks. So that's pretty cool. If you're interested, just reply back to the auto reply you'll get from this, and you'll be able to try it out if you like. So hey everyone, thank you so very, very, very much. I really enjoyed doing this with you all. Stay safe out there. Thank you so much for the input that people put in there. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. I'll be glad to. If you have me come out there and do a training, then that's more of a consultation. But if you want to call me and we'll just talk about your situation, I'm always up for that. And there'll be no cost for that. So hope you're doing great. Hope you have a safe day. And thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your attention and joining this program. Okay, bye-bye.